Welcome to the Gab Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olczak. To participate in the 2026 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com and nycbigbookaward.com. Hi, everyone. On this episode of the Gab Talks, we have the privilege of chatting with Joseph Howse for the second time. His novel, The Circus and the Atom, is the winner of the 2026 Independent Press Award in two categories, literary fiction and world literature. It also placed as a distinguished favorite in the book cover design fiction. It's been released in North America, Europe, and Australia to be followed by a South African launch in March 2026. His debut novel, The Girl in the Water, was recently awarded a distinguished favorite in the 2026 Independent Press Award in the audiobook category. The book was also the winner of the 2023 Independent Press Award for literary fiction. The novels are the start of a multi-generational saga called Next Year's Snow, which hinges on the friendship and strife of two families in the Soviet, post-Soviet world. Collaborations are underway to bring the series into French under the title La Neige de Demain. Joseph is an author, computer scientist, photographer, poet, and consultant. He's written numerous technical books on computer programming and image analysis. As the founder and president of Numist Media Corporation, Joseph provides mentoring and consulting services with a specialty in computer vision. Joseph has experience doing business, volunteer work, and speaking engagements on 6 continents. He's won several awards from B-Peace, which is a pro bono consulting group, for his work on business mentorship projects in El Salvador and Guatemala. He's a graduate of the Dalhousie University and holds a BA in French, MBA in International Business, MA in International Development Studies, and a Master of Computer Science. Joseph joins us from a Nova Scotian fishing village, where he lives with his 4 cats surrounded by an orchard of thriving fruit trees. It sounds marvelous. Congratulations, Joseph. So great to see you again. Welcome to the Gab Talks.
Thank you, Gabby. It's wonderful to be back speaking with you again. Thank you for that kind introduction.
You're welcome. All well deserved. So let's just dive right into it. Why don't we? The Girl in the Water is book 1. Follows of the lives of a group of young people in the last days of the Soviet Union. Its sequel, The Circus and the Atom, takes place in 1988, 5 years after book 1. So, Joseph, let's familiarize our listeners with the novels. Give us your best book pitch on both books.
Sure. The series Next Year's Snow grows out of the lives of a group of Soviet teenagers. In 1983, we meet young 14-year-old Nadia, who is a bookworm, an introvert, observing her country, her family, and her friends going through crisis. We meet her older sister, Nastia, who is an aspiring artist, but nonetheless seeks a kind of conventional security and to nurture a family. We meet her friend Ida, who spends much of her life in and out of institutions, and their friend Johnny, a young man on the fringes of the law and thoroughly an outcast from the society he lives in. The first novel, The Girl in the Water, has in its backdrop the Soviet-Afghan War and the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986, among other events which foreshadow the coming fall of the Soviet Union. The second novel, The Circus and the Atom, sees Nadia going to university in Moscow. The first novel has as its setting Estonia and then Ukraine. Nadia goes to university in Moscow in the second novel, but returns to Kiev to celebrate the new year 1988-89 with her family and with Ida. At this point, the collapse of the Soviet Union is accelerating. The singing revolution in Estonia and the Baltic states is underway, a mass peaceful protest against the Soviet regime. While in the Caucasus, in Armenia and Azerbaijan, the country is descending into civil war and martial law. So the sequel is framed around two extremes of a peaceful change or a vision of peaceful change in one part of the Soviet Union and a violent collapse in another, whereas the characters are geographically halfway in between in Ukraine and are wondering what is going to come of their region, of their family in the future. We, of course, as readers, have some foreknowledge of where that leads, right. but they don't and are reinventing themselves in the midst of an uncertain time of new freedoms, new dangers, new uncertainties. As young people, as young adults now.
It's so interesting. So, Joseph, what first compels you to tell a multi-generational story rooted in the Soviet Union and the post-Soviet world?
I have always been interested in Eastern European history and literature. I have traveled in Ukraine and made many friends and colleagues in the former Soviet world. I have known people who were survivors of the conflict in Armenia and Azerbaijan that is alluded to in the novel. So the region has been part of my thoughts and life for a long time. I've benefited in this sequel from being able to work with a friend originally from Kazakhstan who was born the year the Soviet Union fell. She and her family provided some cultural consulting on some aspects of the second novel, and so it draws on personal interests, reading, and
well, you can tell by reading it that you definitely have a passion for it. It's interesting, as I mentioned in your bio, you've written numerous technical books on computer programming. Your literary style and your debut fiction novels have been compared to Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. Wow. Folks describe it as a tragicomedy. And for those folks who know you, we know that you have a really great sense of humor. It's lifelike family drama and a literary statement. These are all comments that have been made. We're going to circle back to the books, but I have to ask you, why and how did you make the leap from technical books to fiction?
Yeah. So I have wanted to write fiction long before I got into computer science. I had an opportunity to go to university at the age of 15 and study French and English and a bit of Russian literature. And at that time, writing fiction and poetry was very much my ambition. I a little later ended up working in a business with my brother Sam, who was a computer scientist. He died of cholangiocarcinoma, of cancer, and I thank you very much. And I took over the business, went back to university to study computer science, and developed my technical career from there. So, I mean, he was a person who gave me my profession among many other things,
and allowed you to follow your passions.
Yes. And like myself, he had a mix of scientific and cultural interests. He loved the world, so I try to honor him in that way as well.
Well, as an independent publisher, Joseph, what has been your greatest joy and your greatest challenge so far? Two successful books.
You know, I love being able to learn from all aspects of the publishing process. I enjoy being able to bring my technical skills to formatting the books, to getting them distributed as ebooks as well as in print, and working with audiobook producers. So there's certainly a technical aspect to the publishing work that I find interesting and enjoy. I have very much enjoyed getting out to events to meet other writers and readers.
That's the fun part, isn't it?
It is. Including your event, your awards event, including Kingsmead Book Fair in Johannesburg, South Africa, which I had an opportunity to go to in 2024 and will be going to again this May.
And what's been your challenge? What is the most difficult part of it?
Well, being spread very thin. So,
like that.
So, around the time that I do a book release, I have to take some time away from writing to cover the technical aspects of getting the book out and the marketing and publicity aspects. So at the moment, I've just released The Circus and the Atom at the end of December. I will be busy with promotional things until spring, and then returning to writing the third book in the series.
We're going to get to that in another spot of the interview, but I want to get back to the book because we have so much to cover. You portray women as the dominant characters in the book, I think. Several of them begin as teenagers in The Girl in the Water, as you mentioned. Their power, their fortitude, the strength of character are very prominent. Why did you choose to focus so much of the narrative on women?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree that the majority of the main characters are women, many of them young women, though there are also some very strong middle-aged and elderly female characters as well.
Yes.
I find it interesting that women are expected to play many, many roles in life, often one stopping abruptly and another starting. And they are quite underrepresented in fiction that covers times of political and ideological turmoil. So, we read and see on the screen a lot of what collapse looks like from a predominantly male perspective, and including armed conflict and such.
Women are often omitted from that.
They are often omitted, and we see less of how collapse looks like from the perspective of transformation of families, transformation of the identity of people who are out of the spotlight. And those questions interest me.
Both novels also examine a lot of themes: innocence under pressure, oppression, choice, and it's definitely the time in history, and also it's the norm even now that diversity is not tolerated. But each character does seem to have carved out their own little unique sense of self. Especially they come into their own in book 2. Do you see your characters, Joseph, as victims of history or active agents shaping history?
They are who they are in part because of history, and the novels explore a lot the concept of multigenerational trauma. What happens when generation after generation somebody in your family goes to war, somebody in your family is imprisoned, conscripted, sent to a mental institution, sent to an orphanage, etc. What is the cumulative effect of these and other kinds of trauma that keep repeating themselves?
Generational trauma, I think, is what it's referred to.
Yeah. Nonetheless, the characters are very much individuals. The focus of the book is, of both books and the series, is on people who either quietly or loudly do not conform, and in a certain sense cannot conform. We see in book 2 that many of the internal conflicts of the characters are recurring. The outside world is changing. Many of the specific things that antagonized them in the first novel are falling apart. And yet there's a question of how they reinvent themselves in a more uncertain and more chaotic world, and the interiority of those problems
Do you think across generations, we were talking about generational trauma, do you think that across generations patterns repeat despite attempts to escape the past, specifically when we're talking about the relationship between these two families that drive the series?
Right. So to talk a little bit about who those families are, There is Nadia's family, which is a collection of partisans, of crooks, of would-be artists, of policemen with mixed motives and mixed ideas about what they are doing. And the second family that we have is Ida's adopted family. Ida is an orphan. And in the course of the first novel, she is taken in first by Nadia's family, but then for the longer term by a Ukrainian Jewish family who have a long-running connection to Nadia's family going back to the 1920s.
Wow.
So we have a family of Soviet Gentiles, a family of Soviet Jews. And they Nadia's grandmother saves someone in this other family during the Second World War.
Don't give away any spoilers.
But at different points of the series, this family is sometimes at odds ideologically, philosophically, and in wars.
Do you think that readers today might recognize in the pressures your Soviet era characters face? This might be something familiar to us.
I think very much there are parallels in the themes of collapse, in the questions of morality in a time of ideological upheaval. Coincidentally, somewhat coincidentally, the questions that a major character, a policeman, faces in the second novel around what he will do if he is ordered to use violence in a cause he doesn't believe in. Those are questions you might find a policeman asking himself in the United States or in Russia or other places today.
Lots of parallels that we can draw. What is a single word, Joseph, that you would use to define the post-Soviet worlds in your novels?
Oh, riven.
Explain.
Lives and families were torn in two by the collapse of this country. They were torn in two by the creation of that country as well, but again by its collapse 70 years later, or in the Baltic states 40 years after their conquest by the Soviet Union. Economically and in terms of beliefs, the end of the Soviet Union marked an abrupt change in many people's lives. And in many places it appeared that there could be a peaceful transition. In other places not. In Armenia and Azerbaijan, the collapse of the Soviet Union was immediately followed by war. In other parts, it looked like maybe a peaceful transition was possible. That doesn't so much look the case, obviously, today in
Right.
Ukraine. So families have been set against each other. Friends have been set against each other. I hear from people I know that they can no longer speak to their families and friends
Really?
across borders because they are at war and have polar opposite views of what that conflict is about.
Wow.
What does freedom look like, Joseph, in your novels? And is it ever fully attainable to these characters?
Well, this is an age-old philosophical and literary question. And you could ask freedom from what? So,
Right.
in terms, will they be free of the Soviet Union? Yes, and its ideology. Yes, as readers, we know that it's that is falling apart.
I think I'm asking in terms of the characters. For me, maybe in the book, freedom is a little bit more about in terms of their relationships with others, because it is a multi-generational family saga-driven story.
The characters will and do change a lot.
Yeah.
They will shed their surroundings, and one of them does so in the first novel. In the second novel, it is clear that more of them are planning to do so. The third novel will take place partly in Canada.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the third novel. I want to get to that. So it's a multi-generational saga. First question is, did you always know it was going to be a saga when you wrote The Girl on the Water? Because I feel like when we spoke, not so much.
In the first weeks of writing The Girl on the Water, the plan changed from writing a short story to writing a novel to writing a series.
Okay, so right there. So we can assume that these families obviously have unfinished business. When is the next book in the series? Tell us everything about it. Did I hear that there's a prequel?
Yeah. So
I love prequels.
The next book that I am writing takes place in 1998.
So 10 years after.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it the working title is The Excellent Trade. It centers around a dramatic change in Ida's life, where we discover who her birth family actually is.
Right, because you said that she's adopted. That's interesting. Okay, that's a great story.
And that revelation shifts the geographic focus of the novel as well. Shifts it partly to Europe, partly to Canada, and
Okay.
partly to South Africa and Namibia. A little more later on the South African and Namibian connection. So that's the next novel.
Okay.
There is a further novel past that, with the working title The Painter at War, which centers on Nadia's nephew, who
her sister's son.
Her sister's son,
Mhm.
who by this time is a middle-aged painter and a soldier in a present-day conflict. Now, there's also a sequel, which focuses on a prequel, rather. Which focuses on Nadia's grandmother as a young woman.
She was another strong female protagonist in the book.
To circle back to your earlier question on freedom, it is a central question throughout the series whether these characters will ever be free of violence and coercion, both being subjected to it and being placed in situations where they may feel compelled to use violence, right? So that's one of the central questions. And the characters answer it in different ways at different times through the series. There are recurring questions about self-harm as well as other kinds of violence through the series. There are recurring questions about who you can love and trust in a world that is so unpredictable, in a world that exerts at times such crushing forces on individuals.
I mean, the series has such unlimited possibilities. You have 3 more editions of the series coming up. I could imagine that you could just create a book based on any of those themes that you just discussed. And of course, I'm not writing it, so it seems a lot easier. And any of these characters, who are all so interesting in their own.
Well, one of my favorite new characters in the second book is Annika, who is Nadia's roommate at university in Moscow. And Annika is a good example of a character who could have an entire novel of her own. She is from Namibia, which at the time we meet her in 1988, Namibia is just gaining its independence, having been occupied by apartheid-era South Africa. Her father is a Marxist revolutionary, and he disappears, and as a young adult, she decides to go to the Soviet Union as a student and try to find him.
Okay, so there's another book in play for that.
And yeah, I mean, there could.
It's halfway written in your head already. I can see it. So I want to remind readers that The Circus and the Atom also received a distinguished favorite for book cover design. Can you hold up the book, Joseph? And who is the illustrator of both your novels?
So my mother, Annette Chown, is the cover artist. We have this wraparound cover art in both of them.
There's so much detail, so many scenes there. It's really just beautiful.
The a number of the major characters and settings are seen in the cover art.
Congratulations.
That's uh, the original of the Circus and the Atoms
Oh, that is
cover art.
just beautiful. Wow.
We see, among others, Nadia, Ida, Annika, Nastia, Nadia's older sister, Murat, a photographer who is an important character in both novels. Georgi, a policeman, and many others. And it is a real ensemble type of story in the tradition of the Russian classics.
And even the colors that your mom utilized, it feels like the book.
I think it does, and I
Yeah.
mean we work together closely on that. I read the drafts to my parents as they're being written, and so the story has a kind of serial character and a kind of oral character to it that comes from that. And yeah, we work.
So it's a multi-generational novel and series created by a multi-generational artist.
Yeah, it's true.
That's what it is. I love that. I love that. So, Joseph, if readers walk away questioning one belief about history, family, or choice, what do you hope that is?
Well, I think you've always got choices. I would like readers to come away with the sense that you always have choices, even in extreme situations, and we see different characters react to these choices in different ways, which in many cases are not, categorically all good or all bad. I think again, in the tradition of the Russian classics, there is a sense in my novels that crisis, trauma, it is not just about the questions of what will they do to me. It is about the questions of what will they make me do, or what can I do? What kind of person can I be, and how can I lead my life, and with whom can I lead my life, so that I am not compelled to do what I think is wrong, what I think is against my nature, my interests, my morality, what I value.
Even in an oppressive society, we still ultimately have a choice.
But what do you fall back on? What do you fall back on in yourself, in your family, in your friendships to resist being made into something you don't want to be? And these questions of the things you can control are ultimately more important than just being, let us say, glued to the news as an armchair critic, right? I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Joseph, when can we expect to see The Excellent Trade? That's the first one that's coming out.
I think we are shooting for 2027.
Wonderful. And The Painter at War? Shortly thereafter?
Yeah. I think we are shooting for 2027 and 2028.
Excellent.
We will see, because in any case, it's going to get done.
It has to, because you have at least 4 other novels that you have to write based on all of these. So Joseph, lastly, where can listeners purchase your books, follow your work, look at your mom's beautiful art?
Well, both novels are available in paperback and ebook on the usual online stores: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple, Kobo,
Perfect.
and others. The audiobook of The Girl in the Water, narrated by British actress Annette Chown, produced by the Audio Factory in the UK, that is on Spotify, Audible, and all the major audiobook platforms. An audiobook of the Circus and the Atom will also be coming out in a few months' time. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joseph. It was great to see you again. Will we be visiting again at book camp and the awards gala in April?
I'm not sure I can make it this year. I'll be preparing for a book tour in South Africa, but hoping to make it again in the future. And
I hope so. Well, we're looking forward to seeing all your work. Fascinating read. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to see you again.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is your hostess, Gabby Olczak of the Gab Talks. Until next time, keep on reading.